You've been calling it weakness, that feeling in your chest like something's caving in, the heaviness in your legs when you try to get out of bed, the blank stare into the mirror when brushing your teeth feels like climbing a mountain. The world keeps telling you to push through it, to get it together, to move faster, but every part of you is screaming the opposite, and you're starting to wonder if there's something wrong with you. Let me tell you something that will feel like a punch and a hug at the same time. You're not weak. You're just carrying too much that was never meant to be yours. You've been misdiagnosed by a world that never learned how to listen to what exhaustion really means. This isn't laziness. This isn't apathy. This isn't failure. What you're feeling is the weight of everything you've swallowed just to survive. The fatigue you feel isn't just physical, it's energetic. It's the weight of unspoken expectation, of invisible obligations, of being everything for everyone and nothing for yourself. It's what happens when you give and give and give and forget to return to your own center. People look at you and see someone functional, reliable, strong. They have no idea you're running on empty, that your smiles are rehearsed, that your laughter is measured, that inside you're collapsing, not from one big blow, but from 1,000 small ones that no one ever noticed. This is the kind of fatigue that sleep doesn't fix because it's not about rest. It's about return. You've lost access to your own energy, not because it's gone, but because it's scattered, spread thin, leaking through the cracks you stopped noticing. When you walk into a room, you immediately scan the energy of everyone else. You adjust, you shift, you hold the emotional weight. You anticipate needs before they're spoken. You carry conversation. You soften conflicts. You stay silent to keep the peace. And when you finally have time for yourself, you're not alone. You're haunted. Haunted by everything you didn't say, everything you couldn't feel, everything you pushed down because there was no space to just be. So you tell yourself you're tired. But the truth is, you've been drained. You've been operating like a power source for everyone but yourself. And this pattern didn't start last week. It started years ago, maybe even before you could speak. Maybe you were the child who felt too much, who noticed when things weren't right, who tried to make others feel okay so you could finally feel safe. You learned early that love often came with condition, that your peace depended on the moods of others, that staying small was safer than being seen. So you became the one who fixed everything, the one who was always fine, achy. And now, decades later, your body is collapsing under the weight of that performance. This isn't weakness. This is the wisdom of your system saying, enough, enough pretending, enough pouring, enough disappearing. Because the truth is, your strength was never lost. It was just misdirected. You've been using it to hold up everyone else, to silence your own need, to prove your worth in a world that keeps moving the goalposts. But strength isn't about how much you can carry. It's about knowing when to put it down. And right now, your soul is begging you to stop trying to outrun the exhaustion, to stop numbing the ache with noise, to stop wearing burnout like a badge of honor. Because when you stop, something incredible happens. You begin to feel again, not just the pain, but the signal underneath it, the message you've been missing. Your energy isn't gone, it's just misplaced. It's stuck in all the people you're still trying to please, in the roles you never chose but couldn't escape, in the expectations you inherited but never questioned. Every time you said yes when your body said no, you gave away a piece. Every time you smiled when you wanted to scream, you gave away a piece. Every time you carried someone else's storm so they wouldn't have to, you gave away a piece. And now, here you are, wondering why you feel hollow, wondering why you feel like a ghost in your own life. You're not broken, you're just far from yourself. And that's what this fatigue is trying to tell you. It's not a signal of collapse, it's a call to come back home. You've been taught to manage your time, to manage your emotion, your words, your habits, your money. But no one ever taught you to manage your energy, not the energy that runs through wires, the energy that runs through you. And yet, that's the most precious currency you have. More than money, more than hours, more than achievements. Because when your energy is gone, nothing else matters. Not your goal, not your responsibilities, not even your dreams. But energy is subtle. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it disappears gradually, quietly, through open doors you didn't realize were open. So you go about your day wondering why you're so tired after doing nothing. Why even on your day off, you feel like you've been hit by a train. Why you sleep 8 hours and still wake up exhausted. That's not a flaw, that's a leak. Your energy is being siphoned, not just by what you do, but by what you tolerate. Let's start here. Your relationship. Every time you're in a room with someone who constantly needs validation, who manipulates with guilt, who thrives on chaos, your system goes into defense mode. You scan for danger. You manage their emotions before your own. You shrink to avoid setting them off. And while the conversation may seem normal, your body is fighting a silent war. When it's over, you tell yourself, I didn't even do anything, so why am I so tired? But your nervous system knows. It knows what it takes to stay composed when your spirit wants to run. Now think about the environments you stay in. Workplaces where you can't breathe without editing yourself. Social settings where the volume is high, but the connection is hollow. Online spaces that feed comparison, competition, and constant stimulation. Every scroll, every shallow interaction, every task that feels soul-sucking. It pulls a thread of your energy out of you, and over time, those threads don't come back, not unless you reclaim them. Then, there's your own mind. How often are you arguing with yourself in silence, second-guessing every decision, carrying conversations that already ended, imagining future disasters in vivid detail? Thoughts drain energy, especially the ones you repeat on autopilot, especially the ones that are rooted in shame, especially the ones that make you responsible for things you can't control. You might not be doing much on the outside, but inside, you're running marathon, emotional, spiritual, psychological marathon. And you wonder why you feel like you're running out of breath. But here's the part we rarely talk about. There are people and systems that benefit from you staying drained. A tired person is easier to manipulate. A burned-out soul doesn't ask too many questions. Someone with no energy left doesn't fight back. They comply, they perform, they keep the machine running. And maybe that's the most heartbreaking truth of all, that you were trained not just to give your energy away, but to believe that doing so made you a good person. You were praised for being selfless, for being strong, for carrying more than your share. No one asked what it was costing. No one noticed when the light started to fade from your eyes, because as long as you showed up, they assumed you were okay. But deep down, you know you're not. You know something's wrong. You know you're being pulled in too many directions and slowly disappearing in the process. And maybe the scariest part isn't that you're exhausted, it's that you're starting to get used to it. You've normalized the feeling of constant depletion. You've forgotten what it feels like to be energized by your own life. But that doesn't mean your energy is gone forever. It means it's waiting for you to take it back, piece by piece, boundary by boundary, breath by breath. And you can start now, not by doing more, but by doing less. Less explaining, less fixing, less overthinking, less absorbing what was never yours to carry. Because the truth is, you were never meant to give yourself away to everything that asks. You were meant to choose where your energy goes, with clarity, with intention, with care. Your energy isn't weak, it's just been scattered. And it's time to call it home. You've spent your whole life being rewarded for abandoning yourself. From an early age, you were told that your value came from how much you could give, how well you could behave, how seamlessly you could make others comfortable, even if that meant making yourself invisible. The world taught you to be useful, to be agreeable, to be accommodating, but it never taught you to be whole. You were praised when you ignored your needs, applauded when you suppressed your anger, accepted when you dimmed your light to let someone else shine. They called it maturity. They called it being kind. But what it really was a slow erasure. Because while you were learning how to be what others needed, you were unlearning how to be what you needed. And now, all these years later, the result of that miseducation is showing up as exhaustion. Not just physical exhaustion, but soul exhaustion. The kind of tired that sleep can't touch. And here's why. You've been operating from a program that runs on depletion. You were never taught to protect your energy, only to give it away. You were never taught to say no, only to explain why you couldn't say yes. You were never taught that your needs were sacred, only that they were inconvenient. So when someone needed help, you said yes, even when your body screamed no. When someone crossed your boundary, you stayed silent, afraid of seeming selfish. When you felt tired, you pushed harder, because rest felt like weakness. And now your body is paying the price, because your nervous system was not designed for chronic self-abandonment. It can't thrive in constant vigilance, in emotional labor, in energetic compromise. Eventually, something breaks, and that breaking feels like weakness, but it's actually the beginning of truth. You see, we live in a world that glorifies burnout. We applaud people who hustle until they collapse. We admire those who carry the weight of everyone around them. We romanticize suffering, as if pain is proof of purpose. But there is nothing noble about neglecting yourself. There is nothing holy about self-erasure. There is no prize for dying on a hill you never chose to climb. And yet, because we were never taught to question this, we internalized the lie. If I'm not exhausted, I must not be doing enough. If I'm not constantly giving, I must be failing. But this isn't just a personal problem, it's a cultural one. We were conditioned to believe that our worth comes from our utility, that rest must be earned, that silence is laziness, that saying no is betrayal. So we overextend, we overcommit, we overgive. And then we wonder why we feel hollow. Because giving without receiving is a system built to collapse. Imagine a tree that only gives shade and fruit, but never gets water. It might survive a few seasons, but eventually it withers. Not from lack of will, but from lack of nourishment. You are that tree, and your nourishment isn't optional, it's essential. But nourishment looks different now. It's not just self-care routine or spa days, it's radical honesty. It's drawing a line where you used to offer your last breath. It's allowing yourself to take up space without apologizing for it. It's realizing that "I can't" is a complete sentence. And sometimes it means burning the bridge you've been setting yourself on fire to keep intact. Because the truth is, you've spent years mastering how to cope with depletion. But now, it's time to unlearn that. To unlearn the belief that strength means suffering in silence. To unlearn the idea that your energy is infinite. To unlearn the habit of proving your worth through sacrifice. You weren't born to be a battery for everyone else's survival. You were born to be lit from within. And you don't need permission to reclaim that light. You don't need validation to rest. You don't need justification to stop. The most revolutionary thing you can do right now is pause. Not because you're giving up, but because you're coming back. Back to your breath. Back to your boundary. Back to your truth. And here's the thing about truth. It always costs something. Sometimes it costs relationships that only existed because you kept shrinking. Sometimes it costs opportunities that required you to self-abandon. Sometimes it costs an identity you clung to because it made you feel needed. But what you gain is everything: peace, presence, power, and a kind of strength that doesn't come from holding the world up, but from finally letting it down so you can hold yourself. Your body is not betraying you. The headaches, the heaviness, the tightness in your chest, the fog in your mind, these are not random symptoms. They are signals, messages, warnings, and they're not coming to punish you. They're coming to bring you back, because while you've been trying to function, your body has been trying to speak. It whispers first, a little fatigue, a bit of irritation, maybe a moment of dissociation that you brush off as, "I'm just tired." But when you don't listen, the body raises its voice. Your stomach tightens in conversations you shouldn't be having. Your shoulders lock up every time you say yes when you mean no. Your sleep becomes shallow. Your breath shortens. You start waking up already exhausted. That isn't coincidence. It's communication. You've spent so long ignoring the inner compass that now it's screaming through your muscles, your nervous system, your immune response. And you've called it anxiety. You've called it burnout. You've called it stress. But what if it's not a dysfunction? What if it's a divine alarm? Because the truth is, your body is the first part of you to notice when your soul has been silent. We often think of exhaustion as a problem to fix, with more coffee, more sleep, more productivity hacks. But exhaustion is not the problem. It's the evidence of a problem. You've drifted too far from yourself. The mind is brilliant at convincing you to stay. Stay in relationships that hurt. Stay in jobs that drain. Stay in routines that numb. But the body doesn't lie. The body tightens. The body trembles. The body breaks down when you refuse to break patterns. You've been trying to outthink what you can only feel your way through. But the body remembers everything the mind wants to forget. Every time you swallowed your truth. Every time you betrayed your intuition. Every time you smiled to survive. And now, the body is done negotiating. It's asking you to stop, to breathe, to reconnect, to come back from the edges of performance, expectation, and obligation, and return to the center where your truth has been waiting in silence. This isn't about weakness, it's about wisdom. Because somewhere along the way, you learned to see your body as an obstacle, something to override, something to push, something to manage. But your body isn't the obstacle, it's the oracle. It knows before you do. It reacts before you process. It tells the truth before your mouth can form the word. How many times have you gotten sick right after making a big life decision that went against your gut? How many times has your heart pounded before walking into a room that drained you? How many times has your chest felt tight after talking to someone who makes you feel small? That's not irrational. That's information. That's guidance. But because we live in a culture that glorifies output over presence, we've learned to dismiss the body's voice. We take pills instead of asking questions. We stretch pain instead of sitting with it. We speed up instead of slowing down. And yet, no matter how far we run, the body remains unmoved, patient, brutally honest. And if you're willing to listen, truly listen, it will lead you back to what's real, back to your breath, not the shallow one you've adapted to, but the deep one you abandoned when life got too loud. Back to your hunger, not just for food, but for connection, for rest, for meaning. Back to your rhythm, not the one the world demands, but the one your soul moves to when no one is watching. Because here's the truth they don't teach you. The body doesn't burn out when you're weak. It burns out when you've been too strong for too long, in the wrong direction. And now, it's begging you to stop being a warrior in a war that doesn't belong to you, to stop proving your worth through exhaustion, to stop sacrificing your health for approval, because your body is not your enemy. It's your partner, your sanctuary, your messenger, and right now, it's calling you home, not to a place, but to a presence, to a way of living that honors your energy as sacred, to a way of being where power doesn't mean pushing, it means aligning. You don't need to do more. You need to feel more. You need to hear the message underneath the pain. Because once you do, everything you thought was weakness reveals itself as the beginning of real power. You've been told your whole life that strength is about pushing through, about showing up no matter how tired you are, about giving your best even when you have nothing left to give. And you've tried. You've tried to carry everything, be everything, hold everything together. But somewhere along the way, it started to break you. Not all at once, quietly, gradually, like a leak you didn't notice until the house started to flood. And now you're here, not broken, but emptied, not lost, but far from yourself, still breathing, but disconnected from the force that once lived in you like fire. You keep waiting for that fire to come back, for the energy to return, for the moment when you'll feel like yourself again. But maybe that self isn't gone. Maybe it's just been buried under everything you gave away to survive. Because that's what we're never told. When you give your energy away to everything and everyone, it doesn't disappear. It just stops being yours. Every moment you spend worrying about how you're perceived, you're giving away energy. Every time you hold your tongue to keep someone else comfortable, you're giving away energy. Every time you ignore your intuition for the sake of harmony, you're giving away energy. And eventually, there's none left for you. You start living on borrowed vitality, running on caffeine, adrenaline, and expectations. You keep showing up to jobs, to relationships, to conversations, but you're not really there. You're just a shell, performing. And somewhere inside, a small voice is whispering, "When do I get to come back?" But here's the truth you've been dancing around. afraid to say out loud, your strength isn't gone. It's just scattered, and it's waiting for you to call it back. Not through force, not through hustle, not through proving anything, but through choosing, moment by moment, to stop giving your energy to things that feed on your light, but offer you no nourishment in return. And that begins with one radical shift. Stop fueling what drains you. You've been programmed to think that your worth depends on your usefulness to others, that being needed is the same as being loved, that being busy is the same as being valuable. But those are illusions, and illusions are hungry. They need you exhausted. They need you compliant. They need you too tired to question why you feel so empty. But you're starting to question it, aren't you? You're beginning to notice how certain people only come around when they need something. How certain routines no longer feel like ritual, they feel like cages. How certain goals you once had now feel like someone else's dream. And the more aware you become, the harder it is to keep playing along, because you can feel it. The pull back to yourself. It starts subtly. You take longer showers just to be alone. You cancel plans and feel relief instead of guilt. You cry at random moments, not because you're weak, but because your body is finally exhaling after years of holding it all in. These aren't signs of collapse. They're signs of return. Return to your rhythm. Return to your body. Return to your inner authority. The part of you that doesn't need to be explained, defended, or justified. And the more you return, the more your energy begins to come back to you, piece by piece, breath by breath, choice by choice. You start waking up with clarity instead of dread. You feel yourself getting lighter, not because your life got easier, but because you're no longer carrying what was never yours. You feel power in your bones again, not the kind that performs for applause, but the kind that stands in quiet certainty. This is what happens when you stop giving your strength to everything outside of you. It comes home. You remember that boundaries are not walls. They're doors that only open to what honors your energy. You remember that saying no doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sovereign. You remember that rest is not a reward. It's a return. And most of all, you remember that your energy was never weak. It was misplaced. So you stop leaking your light into spaces that only take. You stop explaining your needs to people committed to misunderstanding them. You stop overgiving in hopes of being seen and start standing in the truth that you are already enough. And suddenly, things begin to shift. You attract different conversation. You make different choices. You feel more rooted, more alive, more you. Because you're no longer surviving on scraps of your own soul. You're feeding on your own source. And here's the most powerful part. You didn't need to become anything new. You just had to stop abandoning who you already are. So the next time you feel tired, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "Where did I give myself away today?" Then begin again. Call your energy back. Withdraw your power from everything that doesn't honor it. Breathe deeply, fully, completely. And remember, you were just too powerful to keep giving yourself to a world that never earned you. If this resonated with your soul, let your voice be heard in the comments. And when you're ready, the next step of your return is waiting in the next video, the one your energy has been pulling you toward all along. Click it. You already know it's time.